Filipina ladies in Australia and domestic violence. I think most reasonable Australian men are supportive of measures to protect vulnerable women and children who migrate to Australia from the Philippines with partner visas, spouse visas and fiance visas, that means. How does the department do this? The Department of Immigration and Border Protection, formerly known as Department of Immigration and Citizenship, brought in provision to protect kids from sponsors with a history of violence and sexual abuse of minors back in 2009, with the requirement of police clearances from the Australian Federal Police, known as the National Police Clearance or NPC, when kids under 18 were included in Australian partner visa applications. Now, this move was largely welcomed by Australian men, as we never heard a single objection from those who had to do this. And we've been making these requests of our Australian sponsors since 2009 without any issue. Now, partner visas and domestic violence. Look, one of the issues identified recently was that whilst kids have been protected from pedophiles, and the applicants themselves have long had to supply police clearances, also known as penal clearances, from all countries where they've lived for 12 months or more, they've never scrutinised the sponsors themselves in order to protect vulnerable ladies arriving in a strange country without any backup support from family. Now, it doesn't take much to imagine how it must be like, especially for the less sophisticated ladies with less than perfect English, if they found themselves with a violent and abusive man. Now, it's a new country, unfamiliar surrounds, not knowing anybody, plus having a fear of dealing with the police. You'll find that Filipino ladies, Filipinos in general, don't have a particularly high opinion of the police, and it tends to scare them, the idea of having to go to the police. So that remains a fear, and they will often avoid having anything to do with the police for that reason. So yes, the Philippines has the CFO, which is the Commission for Filipinos Overseas, running pre-departure seminars for partner visa holders migrating to Australia, where they explain to them what to do if they get themselves into trouble. But it still would be much harder to deal with than if she were an Aussie lady. Now, on reflection, so stopped and thought about this, we've had at least one case where we know of it with clients of ourselves, where a sponsor turned out did have a history of domestic violence. And the lady went through a fairly rough time with him. I won't go into details, but it would have been better if she had have known, but she didn't. Why would she? And there have probably been a few other cases too where we didn't hear about these things. We didn't hear the details, so we don't hear everything. Changes have been put into place to minimise the likelihood of this happening, and this has to be a good thing. What it means in short is you supply travel details for the last 10 years, and you supply your address details for the last 10 years. Now, they use this information to work out whether you need a police clearance from any overseas countries, as well as the national police clearance that you now have to supply. And from these police clearances, they will see if you have a record of any serious offences involving violence, sexual assault, or sexual predation. Now, if you have a serious record, and what that means, now we're not talking about you got busted for a bag of dope when you were 18, or you punched the neighbour or something. If you have a serious record where, in other words, where you were locked up, incarcerated in prison for 12 months or more in total for these offences, they will not allow you to sponsor the applicant. In all cases where you have, excuse me, that took off on me. In all cases where you have a record of lesser offences, these details will be disclosed to the applicant so they can make an informed choice as to whether they still wish to proceed or not. Now, they get that choice with a clarity that they didn't have before. So this is the reason for the extra scrutiny. Well worth the effort, I would think. Safer ladies, less fear of the unknown, that has to be a good thing. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it and you would like to subscribe, you can click on the little button down the bottom corner there, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. There are regular articles on aspects of Australian visas to the Philippines on www.downundervisa.com.au. There's a blog page you can subscribe to. There is a free visa assessment form, and there are regular articles on aspects of Australian-Filipino relationships, which you can see on www.filipinawives.com.au. If you can please share these articles and these videos on any of the social media that you use, we would appreciate that. Thank you.